Exchange between Utah reporters and Governor Spencer Cox.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be with you again. It's great to see your faces. I think for the first time, I was a little stunned to see you all. You've all aged very well over the past 18 months. We're glad to see you. Just a couple messages today around the drought and then our COVID response. Just a reminder that we are still living in a desert, and we are in extreme drought or exceptional drought in virtually every part of the state. I saw yesterday that I think Alta has received 0 rain in June, and that's in 2012 they received a trace of rain to this point in June. And those of you that will remember 2012, we had some of our worst wildfires ever, and that's what we're talking about this year. With 100% of the state in drought, 90% categorized as extreme drought, and 70 to 80% as exceptional drought, which is the highest drought level possible. Utah's drought conditions are worse than most of us have ever seen in our lifetime, and 2020 was the driest year on record and one of the hottest, and so this has led to record dry soils. Our snowpack was also very limited, topping out at 81% statewide, much lower in some areas, a little higher in others, and peaking 10 days early. So together with the record dry soils and what little runoff we have received, streams statewide are flowing at less than 50% of normal for this time of year. A dry April was followed by a dry May with less than 1/2 inch of precipitation accumulation in valley locations. And as I just mentioned, June being even drier than that. All of this means less water is getting into our reservoirs. As of June 1st, statewide reservoir levels are 15% lower than last year, which were already lower than the year before, with 21 out of 42 of our largest reservoirs below 55%. Conditions do vary across the state. Some reservoirs are doing okay, but others will definitely run dry this season. Now, we don't know how long this drought is going to last. That is out of our control, but what is in our control is how we respond and what we do as individuals, families, businesses, and institutions to conserve water anywhere we can. Our best hope for now is for all of us to start acting like we live in a drought-filled desert. Deserts don't have a lot of green grass, and so we're encouraging people not to water more than twice a week and to let your lawn go yellow. Lawns are very resilient and will rebound next year. So reserve your landscape watering for trees, shrubs, and flower beds. Set your lawnmower to the highest setting, and consider replacing grass in your parking strip with xeriscaping. You can find more ways to be water-wise at slowtheflow.org. We are taking the same actions and precautions at the state level. As we've mentioned already, I've issued 3 emergency declarations ordering state facilities to limiting water to twice per week, turning off sprinklers on windy days, fixing leaks. We really want to lead by example. We've also asked our local governments and other business communities to join us in these conservation efforts. Now, I do want to touch on the COVID situation as well. Nationally, COVID cases are no longer falling. They are plateauing right now. This doesn't mean that we're seeing a surge or a spike, but we need to continue planning to get as many people vaccinated as possible. That is still our watchword. We just need people to get vaccinated. Here's what cases are doing in Utah as an update. We've seen a small increase and a plateau now. We had seen cases get down into the low 200s at one point. We're now back up to about 270 to 280 cases. That has remained, our rolling 7-day average has remained pretty steady over the past week. It looks like our rolling 7-day average today is at 280. But the good news is that, as always, vaccines work to protect us, to protect you, and protect all of us from variants that we're seeing. Just a few numbers. I'll share the breakthrough numbers with you right now. Of the 1,013 total breakthrough cases that we've had, 1,013, we've had 108 breakthrough hospitalizations and just 3 breakthrough deaths. Since March 23rd, when vaccines opened up to everyone 16 plus, there have been 28,233 total COVID cases. So if you're doing the math there, that means that basically 97% of them, 96.8% of them have been unvaccinated people. Also, there have been 1,625 hospitalizations, which means that 95.2% of them were unvaccinated. And there have been 113 deaths, which means that 98.2% of those deaths have been unvaccinated. Short story, vaccines work. They work at the rates we were told they were going to work. They're incredibly successful, and we need people to get vaccinated. Now, I think it's interesting to note, we've talked before in these press conferences what is happening in other parts of the world as well. I think it's instructive to look at Great Britain, who has done a fairly good job of getting people vaccinated. They're seeing cases rise, mostly due to the Delta variant, which scientists have found is a more contagious variant that is easily spread, tends to last a little longer, and can be a little more damaging to people. The great news is that the vaccines work against the Delta variant. They work just as well against the Delta variant as the other variants, and so we really can protect people. But as we see cases plateau and raise a little bit here in Utah, the Delta variant is here. We believe that the Delta variant is growing, and we'll have some updated numbers that should be coming out, I think, tomorrow. That will show an increase in the Delta variant here in the state of Utah, but again, not amongst vaccinated people. So the answer, as always, is to get vaccinated. There are people younger than age 50 in our hospitals right now on oxygen. These are people with no prior health conditions, and they can't breathe well enough on their own and are requiring hospitalization because they were not vaccinated. It's very sad. Multiple times during the past 2 weeks, I've had conversations with families whose loved ones have died or who are in the hospital in dire circumstances right now because they refuse to get vaccinated. Completely preventable. They didn't have to die. They don't have to be in the hospital, but they're dead now, and they're in the hospital now because they refuse to get vaccinated. So please, please, please get vaccinated. Please encourage your family members to get vaccinated. Here's what we're seeing from Ashley Regional Medical Center in the Uinta Basin. This is a quote from Greg Gardner, the chief clinical officer at the medical center there. He said, "We are seeing an uptick in COVID-19 patients being admitted to the hospital. All of the current individuals that have tested positive did not receive the vaccine." We have a goal of vaccinating 70% of all adults with at least one dose by July 4th. Now, it's looking like we're not going to get there. Unless we have a big surge of vaccinations over the next couple of weeks, and we're hoping that will happen. We're pulling out all the stops to make that happen. The good news is we're at 64.3% of adults who have been vaccinated in the state of Utah. So we're close. We're within shouting distance of 70%. If you're wondering, we are right at the national average. So we're at 64.3 of all adults. The national average is 65%. So we're right there. So the good news is we're not doing worse than the nation. The bad news is we're not doing better than the national average. And we would certainly like to be doing better. And so we need all of your help. We sent a letter out to, I believe, 10,000 businesses this past week, encouraging businesses to help us in this, encouraging their employees to get vaccinated, helping make vaccinations easy for them by giving them time off, even their willingness to incentivize their employees to get vaccines, to host mobile vaccine clinics, and we think that will certainly help if we can do that and get more people vaccinated. With that, I want to thank our media partners for helping to push vaccines. We appreciate, I know several of you have helped. ABC4 held a vaccine clinic, and Telemundo also held a town hall to inform residents of opportunities. So we appreciate everything that you're doing to continue to get that message out there of the importance of vaccines. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Governor, scientists agree that climate change is leading to higher temperatures and stronger wildfires in the West. And I want to talk big picture here. Given these realities, what more should the state and businesses be doing to address human-caused climate change?
Yeah, so there are lots of things that we should be doing to continue to address drought, climate change, our air quality, all of those different things. The good news is that we have implemented many things over the past couple of years that will have an impact. So Tier 3 gasoline is a great example of that. We're seeing our air quality improve, pollutants coming down, the things that lead to that greenhouse effect that you're referring to. We have more to do as we continue. I just had a meeting this past week where I had an opportunity to engage with the Secretary of Energy for the Biden administration. We had a wonderful conversation about things that we can do with the help of the federal government to enhance and improve energy production in our state and across the West. That includes alternative forms of energy. One of the problems, the federal government is actually hindering our ability to advance energy production in the state when it comes to permitting transmission lines and solar projects, wind projects. It can take up to a decade to get the permits that are needed for those types of projects. They've agreed with us that we need to streamline those things. Also, the critical minerals that are necessary for many of these renewable energy projects, like solar, are found here in Utah and throughout the West, but we can't get access to them, and we have to rely on China for those types of things. The administration admitted that was a problem, that we need to unlock those critical minerals for safe mining practices in the West so that we can continue to work on these renewable energy projects. We also talked about carbon capture so that we can continue to use the traditional fossil fuels in cleaner ways until alternative forms of energy are more economical. And that carbon capture technology, much of which is being worked on and developed right here in Utah and in other places throughout the West, will have a huge impact. And then the big announcement a couple weeks ago in conjunction with Wyoming and Rocky Mountain Power about the possibility of new nuclear energy technology that could have huge impacts on our emissions throughout not just the West but throughout the entire world. So those are areas where we're really focused on improving. And I will say we have to do more on the drought side as well. Utah is just 1% of the United States and a fraction of the world, and so we have to be prepared for these types of drought events, which means more conservation. It means changing the way that we utilize water. It means incentivizing better behaviors, less grass, more xeriscaping, those types of things. Additional storage, especially underground storage as well, as we continue to enhance the aquifers underground where water doesn't evaporate. There's some great projects in Iron County around that. So there are so many things that we are doing, but so many more that we should be doing and will be doing over the coming months and years.
Governor, two-part question.
Yes.
Will you impose a statewide fireworks ban? And if not, what should local communities be doing?
Yeah. So I received a legal opinion last night from the Attorney General's office and from my general counsel that I do not have the authority to implement a statewide ban. I do think it's a good idea. I believe, look, for me, fireworks are awesome. We love fireworks. We do fireworks every year with my kids and with my family. But there are rare circumstances when things are so dire. If it were up to me, a really easy fix would just say that any areas that are in exceptional drought shouldn't have fireworks. That's just a really easy fix. The statute is pretty messy. It's tough for communities. We're trying to get a legal opinion out to local communities so they can understand exactly what they can do under the law. And I'm encouraging local communities to put those restrictions in place. They do have the authority to do that to some extent, and that depends on how close they are to wildland-urban interfaces. Again, the statute is fairly complex. We want to get them good legal analysis on what they can do. I've told the legislature I think it's a terrible idea not to have additional restrictions this year. They haven't shown any interest in doing anything more around that. So we are relying on local governments to put those restrictions in place. I would also say, look, people, just please, this is not the year. Even if you think you're being extremely safe, it's so easy. One spark, everything is so dry. It's drier than you think. We saw this in 2012 when I was talking to biologists when they saw sagebrush, which is the most resilient plant we have in the state, that the sagebrush was actually dying because it was so dry. And when the plants and soils have that little moisture in them, they basically act like toilet paper. One spark and it just runs. And so you also need to know that just because you can do fireworks, if you start a fire, you will be held liable for that fire. You will be responsible for paying to have that fire put out and any damages that occur. So again, just be extremely careful.
So to be clear, under your emergency powers that you enacted for a pandemic, for droughts, for floods, for fires, you cannot do it for fireworks?
That's what I was told last night. Yeah, that's what I was told last night.
Did you request that opinion?
I did.
And had
Yes.
the Attorney General said that you could impose a fireworks ban, would you?
Yes.
No question.
I would have imposed a fireworks ban. What I think should happen is that I think we should impose a ban statewide and then allow communities to designate safe zones where they want to have fireworks allowed. Now, communities can do a version of that, but in the reverse. In this case, fireworks are allowed unless and until the city says otherwise. And again, there are some restrictions on the city's ability to do that under the statute. Now, I would also encourage, as cities are looking at this, again, their attorneys are going to have to look through this, make sure that they do it the right way. We have cities that have placed those restrictions already, and so I'm encouraging citizens to look very closely at what they have. I just can't emphasize this enough, guys. It's worse than you think it is out there right now. And maybe we'll get some storms. I'm praying, I'm hoping that we'll get some storms between now and July 4th. But my understanding is last year we had over 60 fires in the state that were caused by fireworks. Over 60 human-caused fires that didn't need to happen, and one of those can turn into $1 million a day fire. That's how damaging these things can be. So, just a reminder: fireworks are illegal right now. They're illegal until 2 days before the 4th of July. They are illegal. We already have, where I do have authority, where the state fire marshal has authority, is outside of incorporated areas, and we have put that into place, that restriction on fireworks outside of incorporated cities.
So at this point, do you go back to the legislature and say, well, I don't have the power now, but I want the power next year?
Well, they have the power now. I doubt they're going to give me that power if they're not interested in doing it themselves.
But are you seeking fireworks restrictions next year then? We only allow a couple days before, a couple days after. We have certain hourly restrictions. Are you going to ask the legislature to maybe consider an all-out ban?
What I would like, no, I would not ask the legislature for an all-out ban. What I would like to see happen is in areas of exceptional drought that there's just an automatic ban. Whenever we're in a condition of exceptional drought in that area, and again, not all of the state's in exceptional drought, but most of the state is, that if you're a community that's in exceptional drought, that to me is a very easy categorization. It's just common sense, and that's the type of thing I would like to see the legislature put in place. So we don't have to do this every year. Every year the legislature messes with the fireworks code. Every year there's some restrictions here and less restrictions here. We fight about it every year, and to me the easiest way to do is just say, hey, let's just look at the conditions. Let's let the weather decide whether or not we have fireworks. That just seems like common sense, but I don't know.
What's the legal explanation on why you can't enact a statewide?
So I don't have the legal explanation in front of me right now. We got the opinion last night. I had a quick conversation with my general counsel this morning. But what I was told is that, well, we can suspend statutes in a case of emergency. We can't alter the statute, and that doesn't allow me the authority to ban fireworks.
Okay, we do have some remote reporters joining us. We'd like to go to Emily with KUER.
Hi, Governor Cox. You talked a little bit about what the state can do to address the climate crisis going forward, and drought is a big part of that. But I want to ask you about something that maybe the state hasn't been considering. And stick with me here. There's a little bit of background,
okay.
But there is a small city in Summit County that has temporarily banned new development to deal with its water crisis. Obviously, the state is in extreme drought, but we do have a lot of new development planned for the future, including huge state-run projects like the inland port. So do you think Utah should be pumping the brakes on development so we can get a handle on our water crisis going forward?
So what I think is that every community has to make that determination, and all new development has to go through a process where they have to be able to show the water resources that are available for future growth. We've seen this. That's not uncommon. There are lots of towns and communities that have limited home building permits or building permits at all because they don't have the water resources until they get those water resources. So this is something that has happened throughout the history of Utah. We are the fastest growing state in the nation, and so it's something we always have to be aware of. Those are things that should definitely happen on a community by community basis. This is one of the mistakes that we do make, is just that assuming that every water district is the same. They're all extremely different. Many have significant resources that could last for decades and decades. Others have more limited resources. So those decisions will definitely have to be made at a local level, and they are made every time a building permit is issued. They have to be able to prove that they have the water available for that. So I'm look, the minute you limit growth, then only rich people can live here, and I'm not interested in that at all. I am interested in using the resources that we have more wisely. What we should be doing instead of limiting growth is limiting park strips next to fast food joints that make no sense, where we end up watering the sidewalk. I mean, next time you drive through any of our major cities, just look at those park strips in business districts. They do absolutely nothing to add to the community. All they do is waste water, significantly so. On a quarter-acre lot, one watering is about 3,000 gallons of water on average. That's a tremendous amount of water that we're using for very small spaces. So there's so much more we can do to limit our water, to conserve our water, besides just limiting the ability for our kids and grandkids to live here.
Governor, are you contemplating more water restrictions in the near future?
So those water restrictions, again, will be made at the local level. We'll continue to watch this. We meet regularly with what we refer to affectionately as the water buffaloes, the people that run those local water districts, the conservation districts throughout the state. Look, they are very attuned to this. They know what's happening, and they know what they need to do. They have implemented restrictions all across the state. You all have reported on those, and we will see those continue. What you will see from me is we will be working with the legislature, preparing for the coming session on some fairly significant, what we hope will be some significant improvements to conservation efforts across the state.
Okay, Emily has a follow-up question for you.
Right. So I know that a lot of these decisions are made at the local level, but certainly the state is pushing growth and even its own projects. I mean, in Wasatch County, MIDA is building a huge ski resort there, and that's something that the local districts don't necessarily have as much control of. So just looking ahead, 20 years, this drought could continue on and get even worse. How is the state planning around that with its plans for development as well?
Yeah, well, exactly what I just mentioned. We understand the importance of development here in the state, and we are a very pro-development state. I'm not ashamed of that in any way. And droughts have come and droughts have gone throughout history. We understand that climate is changing. There's no question about that. And so what we're doing to prepare for that is exactly what I just mentioned. We continue to work with our local water districts to develop new sources of water, new storage of water, and then most importantly, new conservation efforts of water to make sure that we're using less per capita than we are right now. That's how we prepare for the future, and that's how we prepare for the growth that will surely continue to come.
Okay, and that's all the time we have for our television broadcast. You can join us back here next month for the Governor's Monthly News Conference. Okay, Brian, did you have a question?
I do. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll try to get one more in. Different issue, critical race theory. So the State Central Committee of the Republican Party passed the resolution this past weekend saying it wants to ban critical race theory in Utah schools. You have said in K through 12 you think it should be banned, but allowed in higher ed. Will you call a special session? They also want to be done prior to the school year. So will you call a special session to take up critical race theory? And if not, if the legislature calls itself into session and passes a ban, will you sign it?
So a couple things that I think are important. One is we already had a special session to deal with this, and I didn't put it on the call then, so there's no way I'm going to call a special session to deal with this. Number two, I believe legislative leaders yesterday said that they had no interest, nor could they. I don't believe they have the ability to call themselves into special session for something like that. The law that was changed to allow them to call themselves into special session, it would have to be an emergency, and I'm not sure how this would rise to an emergency. The reason I don't know how it would rise to an emergency is because it's not being taught anywhere in our schools. Not only that, but the appropriate place to deal with this has always been with the state school board. That is their constitutional mandate, and they did. They worked on this. They've worked on it for many months. They passed a rule around this just recently. It was well covered. My understanding is that at least for many members of the legislature that they were satisfied by that action. So we'll see what happens in January. We're wasting a lot of a lot of breath on this one for something that again, there's been accusations that it's being taught in schools, but those have been investigated and none of them have come to fruition. So it seems like a solution in search of a problem. I don't think it should be taught in school. So I'm sure the follow-up question is, would you sign it if it was passed, even in a general session? And what I always say to that is I have to see what the bill is. One of the problems with critical race theory is I've talked to 50 people and they all have 50 different definitions of what it is. So we'll have to look at that. I've also been very clear that we need to teach the history of this country, the best parts of our history and the worst parts of our history. And some of the worst parts of our history are the way we have dealt with racial issues in our past. Some of the best parts of our history are the ways that we've been able to overcome those issues and bring new opportunity for everyone. I had an opportunity just this week to attend a naturalization ceremony for the 14 newest citizens of the United States of America living right here in Utah, and they came from all over the world. They came from Africa, they came from Asia, they came from Eastern Europe, and to see these refugees want to come here to the greatest nation in the world so that they can seek opportunity. That's the best of our country, and those are the things that we should be teaching as well.
Okay.
Amid this this drought, should Utah start looking to Nevada as an example with regard to water or lawn restrictions?
Yeah, we look to other states, Arizona, Nevada. We're trying to get better information around. There hasn't been a real good apples to apples comparison of water usage per capita. Every state kind of measures their water usage a little differently, but certainly there are some good examples from other states that we can learn from. Some other states that have drier climates or less water storage than we have. I believe, and it's always dangerous when I do this off the top of my head, but I believe that Nevada just a couple weeks ago implemented a new program where they're incentivizing businesses to remove I don't remember the term, unnecessary grass, something like that, where they remove park strips around businesses, that kind of thing. Leave it for families and those types of developments, but remove it there, and then prohibit it in new construction moving forward in those types of business districts and areas like that. That's certainly something that we're exploring and that we're interested in proposing.
Okay, Chris with St. George News, go ahead with your question.
Governor, you said last night you spoke with the White House concerning energy policy. Have you also spoken with the White House, I know you do want to, concerning the Bears Ears and Escalante national monuments? And if so, what is the result? And if not, why not at this point?
Yeah, so thanks, Chris. So that conversation was specifically with Western governors in an interview that I was able to do with the energy secretary, and so obviously she doesn't have much to do with the interior. We have requested the ability to have a conversation, as has, I think you saw this. Every member of our congressional delegation has reached out to the White House for a conversation before a decision is made on the recommendations around expanding our national monuments, and so we have not had that conversation yet. We're hoping to be able to do that, and of course that rests with the White House and their willingness to talk to us. We've also requested an ability to look at any sort of proclamation before they issue it, so we can give them some input on ways to make that proclamation better. I have no idea if we'll get that opportunity. Certainly, in the past, when President Clinton and President Obama were in office, we were not, unfortunately, given those opportunities to give input on the wording of any proclamation. And so we'll just continue to move forward. We understand that a recommendation has been given. We have not seen that. We have not been given insight into looking at that, other than what has been reported in the media. But we would very much like the opportunity to weigh in.
Okay, Lisa with the Deseret News, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Governor, I'm wondering if we could switch to COVID-19 vaccine incentives. I know you had a real interest in those, the legislature not so much, but I understand that talks are ongoing. It looks like a lottery that you've discussed before, similar to what Ohio and other states are doing, is off the table. Maybe you got advice that legally it couldn't be done in Utah. I haven't been able to clarify that. Maybe you can do that for me. But I'm also interested in, with this emergence of the Delta variant, if that's giving a new push to getting some kind of agreement on perhaps other giveaways the state might use federal COVID relief money to pay for. I know other states are offering gift cards or discounts on state services like hunting and fishing licenses, things like that. What's the progress you're making there? Do you think Utahns will see something, and if so, how soon?
Thank you, Lisa, for the question. So we have had conversations with legislative leadership around the potential for some sort of incentive or inducement for people to get the vaccination. There hasn't been much interest in that, but it is correct that we continue to have those discussions. And just as kind of an aside, we don't believe that some sort of giveaway like that would be a violation of state statute or the state constitution. So I don't think there are any legal issues around that. But we're relying heavily on the private sector to help us there. We've had some conversations with businesses to see if they would be willing to do something to step up, and so those are just very, very, very preliminary conversations. But I think there is a possibility. Certainly within, again, as I mentioned, we sent out letters to 10,000 businesses encouraging them to work with their employees and their employees' families to help and incentivize them in any way they can, even if it's just, hey, take some time off to go get the vaccine, making it easier for them, or having the vaccine on location. But we have had some businesses that have offered $100 or $200 to their employees to get vaccinated. We would encourage that businesses to continue to do that, and I would love to see something also where businesses step up, not just internally but externally as well. We've seen that with a few businesses. I think Krispy Kreme. I don't know if they're still giving away donuts for people with vaccine cards, but we've seen that nationally to some extent. I would love to see more of that locally if we can help just those people that are kind of on the fence right now, to get them closer. And look, it's fascinating to me. If you think back to where we were in March or April of last year, like what would we have done, right? If we knew there was something that could prevent the death and disease and the disruption to our economy, we said we would do anything, right? We would try everything, just anything. That was the mindset. We've got to try to stop this, and now it's here. It's here. We have it. It's incredible. It works. It's safe. It's enormously successful, and suddenly there's a reluctance to do things that would encourage people to get it. Again, it doesn't. Not a lot of common sense there, but that's where we are.
Governor, in regards to the SEC investigation of Co-Diagnostics over Test Utah, why did the state decide to turn to a Silicon Slopes adjacent startup when its own health department experts were warning about the tests?
So sorry, could you repeat that? So, the Co-Diagnostics?
Yeah, the SEC investigation of Co-Diagnostics over Test Utah. Why did the state decide to turn to the Silicon Slopes adjacent startup rather than working with the health department when experts were warning about the tests?
Well, so there was a divide in people who were talking about those tests. I guess we're beating this horse again. I thought it was dead, but let's kick it one more time. It's fascinating to me to see, again, so the question is, why did we turn to Silicon Slopes? We turned to anybody and anything. This is exactly what I was saying back in March and April. Imagine what would have happened. So by the way, this test and turns out that the experts were all wrong on testing early on. And this has been very well documented. This idea that you had to have very, very few of these incredibly sensitive tests was the worst possible testing strategy we could have implemented as a country. Doctors like Scott Gottlieb from the FDA have said this, and it became very, very clear. These tests were used all over the country. By the way, I believe that these tests received, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they received approval from the European Union very early on in the process, and then received FDA approval here to use in the state. Could you imagine what would have happened if we refused to use a test that had received FDA approval at a time? Remember, when we could only do a few hundred or 1,000 tests a day, we were drowning, and it was taking weeks for these tests to come back. And so we did everything we could. Anybody that had tests that had been approved by the FDA, we wanted those tests here. We needed to be doing 10,000 tests a day, and instead we were doing 400 or 500 tests a day. And so that's why we did it. We used these tests were used all over the country, saved thousands of lives, and I don't know what's happening with the SEC. I've not been apprised of that. I've never had a conversation with the SEC. All I know is that we got notice that the FDA had approved this Utah company's test, and I sure as hell was going to use all the tests we could get here in the state of Utah.
Okay, Sean with the St. George Spectrum, go ahead with your question.
So the Dixie State University, several committees have recommended dropping the name. Do you think this will happen in the state legislature, or do you think it'll get stalled out like it was last year? And do you approve of a name change for the university?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So this is very controversial. I know I've said this before. I've joked many times that when we changed colors at Snow College, when we added the color orange, it was the most divisive thing to happen in Sanpete in about 100 years. And so I can only imagine how people in that community what a potential name change means and how controversial that is. So while I think it's important to understand what happened in the legislature this last go around. While an official name change did stall out, there were steps that were taken to put into place this process for potentially changing the name, including the committee that has come back and recommended a name change. And so that process is ongoing. The whole idea, the whole process was that the legislature would then take it up again in January, February of next year, next legislative session, and actually make a decision based on the recommendations that have come to them. And so that is still all ongoing. There have been and will continue to be opportunities for people to weigh in on the decision for a name change. So I'm anxious to see what comes out of this. Again, we do have a name that has been recommended. I know some people are saying it's a long name. It's a polytechnic. What does that mean? Why is that included? Why no other universities have those names? What I would point out is that what we're talking about here are the Texas Techs, Virginia Techs, Caltech. These types of universities are very common, these types of names, and that's what we would be talking about. It would be basically Utah Tech University, and so I've always liked that idea of having Utah in the names of our public institutions. I think it adds a gravitas and a legitimacy to the institution. I also think again that this is an institution that has changed over time and has an incredible future ahead of it, and the name could hold that back. Not for the racial connotations. I know that's gotten the most attention, but it's just a very confusing name. It's a nickname based on a nickname for another part of the country, and no one outside of Utah has any idea that the St. George area is known as Utah's Dixie. That's just not a thing, and so that type of confusion is always going to hinder graduates as well as the ability of the university to accomplish what it could be and what it could become. That being said, I also recognize that that history matters to people, and that institutions matter to people and communities. And so I think we have to be very careful and very sensitive around that. I don't know what's going to happen with the legislature. I expect that there seems to be, at least there were enough votes to get that process started, and I don't think that they would have started the process if they didn't think there would likely be a name change. So I'm guessing there's a pretty good chance that the legislature will approve that, but we'll find out more as we get closer to the legislative session.
Okay, Jacob with KSL.com, go ahead with your question.
Good morning, Governor. Going back to the pandemic, I wanted to ask you about consumer confidence. That's not really something that we've heard discussed for a while, but I'm interested in where that stands. I think the letter that went out to businesses that this week should probably strengthen that consumer confidence. But with cases going back up a little bit, we're seeing another plateau. Is there any worry that we might, lose some of that consumer confidence again? That might, force businesses to shut down or furlough their employees, especially since we don't have those extra federal pandemic unemployment benefits.
Thanks for the question. So historically, we have not measured consumer confidence here in the state of Utah. That's been done at the national level. But this is something that we felt was important. And so we have started measuring consumer confidence now. And the good news is that the consumer confidence, I don't have the numbers in front of me. We can certainly get the latest numbers out to you. But consumer confidence is very high in Utah and it just incredibly robust and for good reason. Again, Utah has the best economy in the country by just about any measurement. We're one of only 2 states that had positive job growth during the pandemic, and we have the lowest unemployment in the country. We've got 70,000 jobs that are available right now for people. So people are bullish on Utah, not just Utahns, but people everywhere across the country. U.S. News and World Report showed us as the best economy. So many other publications have done that as well. So to the second part of the question, I don't think that we will see any regression in that consumer confidence just because of our vaccination rates. Again, we're right at the national average with 65%, 64.3% of adults that have received at least one dose of the vaccination. Our adolescents, our 12 to 18-year-olds are getting vaccinated at the national rate or above the national rate, which is good news. We are a very young state, so those under 12 still aren't eligible for the vaccine, but they're at less risk than others for the disease as it stands right now. And so I'm not worried because so many people have gotten vaccinated and so many people have that confidence now that they can go back to doing things the way they were doing it before and to do so safely.
Governor, do you have any thoughts on the bills that are being considered in the legislature dealing with transgender youth right now as they stand?
Well, look, we've had these conversations around these bills last session. I don't know of any material changes that have happened since that past session. We'll continue to engage. I haven't had a chance to listen to the hearings that happened yesterday, although Ben, I know you were covering that, and I was able to follow your Twitter on those. So that's all I've gotten, but I haven't been able to listen to them personally. I thought there was some very thoughtful debate and dialogue. I think that's a good thing. As I've said before, I'm not really interested in culture wars. That's not something I get excited about. It's not what gets me up every day and drives me in politics. I know it's an increasingly bitter and I guess important part of our politics. Although I would argue it's mostly misguided. But I also believe that we can do things better here in the state of Utah. I have said that. We've shown that in the past. I hope that that's still true. That we can find solutions that protect people and especially help our most vulnerable communities to feel like they belong. I've said before, I'm much more worried about suicide rates amongst our LGBTQ population, our transgender friends, and that's certainly where my emphasis has been. And so I want to make sure that whatever we do, we do it in a way that is kind and compassionate, and that people are at the table having those conversations.
But given that you said that there's no material changes in the bill, does that mean that they're cruising for a veto if they were to be getting through the legislature?
I don't know that we have a bill. I haven't seen a bill, so I don't know what those bills would entail. Nothing has changed with what I said the last time. We did have one of those bills. The other one I don't think ever even came out of rules, and so I have to wait until I see the bill, and I have to see the process too. Process really matters to me, and I want to know who's at the table and who's working on these things. And if it's just one side, then I get a lot lot less interested.
Governor, you asked people to pray for rain. You said in response that you received that there was vitriolic reaction. Is that another example, in your view, of unfair ridicule that is growing against people of faith?
Well, I think there's unfair ridicule growing against everyone. I think we continue to be addicted to outrage. I think contempt is celebrated when it should be be looked down upon. It was an interesting contrast to me in the space of a few days as I issued a Pride declaration, the first governor in our state's history to recognize Pride Month, and to see some of the vitriol and the contempt that was attacked there, and then to issue a plea for people to ask a higher power, people of all faiths, or whatever you believe in, to petition for help with our weather patterns right now, and to see the backlash to that. And I've just decided, I mean, I could declare today that the sky is blue and there would be a backlash, I'm sure. And so I don't know that it's particularly, I don't want to say that people of faith are being picked on any more than anyone else. What I am saying is that I'm done with it. I'm just so done with people just attacking and hating and blasting. It's people are just losing their minds, and I know it's not everybody. I know it tends to be a fairly vocal minority, but I think it's a growing percentage of the population. I think we've certainly seen that, and social media doesn't help. There are lots of things. I attacked cable news last time we were here together. I think. Sorry, Jason Chaffetz. He tweeted at me during that. We had a good back and forth. But yeah, I just look, guys. Let's argue. Let's debate. Let's talk about these things. And by the way, when I say that there were people that were critical of that conversation, that's okay. There were a lot of people who said, hey, why are you asking us to pray for rain when we should be conserving more? And they're right. We should be conserving more. Those aren't the people that I'm mentioning. It was it were people that were taking just shots at anybody who dared to believe that there was a higher power out there. And I am who I am. I am who I said I was. This is something I believe in personally. I know it's something that a lot of people believe in. I so appreciated other faiths who joined in. The Islamic groups across the state who joined. They had a special day of prayer. A week later, there were so many that stepped up, and I think these are the types of things that can be unifying for us.
You're done with it. When you're done with people throwing criticism at anything.
No, I'm not done with people throwing criticism. Okay, criticism is very important. Let me be clear.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So you're done with it. You said you're done with this what?
Hate. I'm done with hate.
Okay, and that means going forward. What
saying I'm done with it is just a figure of speech. It's not. I don't know. It's something the kids say these days, Brian. I don't know. It just means I'm tired of it. Okay. I guess.
On that note, why did you issue a Pride proclamation?
Because I love our LGBTQ community. They're awesome. And I want them to feel like they're an important part of the state. And for lots of them, they haven't felt like that for a long time. So I think there's room for people of faith who believe that a God can send rain. And I think there's room in this state for people who love people differently than I do, who maybe have again different races, different religions, different sexual orientations. There's room for all of us here in this state of Utah, and we're a better place when we care about each other and when we celebrate those uniquenesses. It's really cool. My wife always says that you can't. It's hard to hate up close. And so the more time we spend together, we saw that this week when when Dr. Johnson, the CEO of the NAACP, was here meeting with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and actually speaking in one of the religious services for the church on a Sunday here in downtown Salt Lake City. I had an opportunity to go to the Calvary Baptist Church, and that next night, Monday night, and meet with civil rights leaders who had come here from outside of Utah, as well as civil rights leaders that were here, and members of my faith leadership there, and that was something I never thought I would see happen. And it's happened, and I wish everyone could have been in that room. It was just an incredible feeling of kindness and love and compassion and brotherhood and sisterhood, and that's the best of Utah. And so, Brian, when I say I'm done with it, I'm in on this. I'm in on that kind of thing. I want to see more of that. I want to see more of us reaching out to people who are different than us and maybe have had different histories and different backgrounds and finding ways to come together. And that's why I did it, Ben.
Okay. I have an email question real quick from Rick Aaron with ABC4 Utah. He would like to know how many submissions the Division of Water Resources has received on the Fame of Shame webpage, what's being done with that information, and is there any enforcement at the state level?
So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, and I apologize for not having an answer to that. What I can tell you, so enforcement for water violations happen at the local water district level, and some districts are better at enforcement than others. But what I can tell you is that most water districts are ramping up their enforcement right now. We have some districts that are doing a 3 strikes type. Weber Basin District is one of those where 3 violations and then your secondary water is turned off. And so I can tell you there is increasing enforcement that is happening.
Okay, thank you so much. You stuck with us through this full hour. We appreciate it, and we will see you back here next month.
Hey, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Be safe out there. Stay cool.